Okay, hi. So this is a bit niche of a video, but I'm gonna do it anyway. So I'm gonna be talking about my favorite used bookstores in upstate New York. Just for the class's awareness, upstate New York has nothing to do with New York City. And people get very huffy about what is upstate New York versus what is downstate versus what is central and what is southern tier and all of that. I didn't grow up here. I don't have any stakes in the game, but I live in the capital region, which is Albany area, which is 3 hours north of New York City, and I consider it to be upstate New York. And I love to go to used bookstores. It is how I have acquired most of my collection. I rarely buy new, and so I just wanted to talk about some of my favorite used bookstores in this area, in case anyone lives around here, or in case you're ever venturing from New York City to the Adirondacks and stop through the area, or maybe you're going leaf peeping in fall and just happen to be in the area. So I am going to recommend for bookstores, kind of. So the first one is not a store, it is a town that essentially is just a bunch of conglomerated used bookstores, and that is Hobart, New York. So I have lived in New York since 2015, and I have no idea how I didn't know about this place until I saw it on Instagram within the past year. So Hobart, New York, it's I don't know how to describe middle of nowhere New York, because it's very different than middle of nowhere Texas or middle of nowhere California. It's this middle of nowhere town that is literally just like a main strip with basically nothing but bookstores. And each bookstore has its own vibe it's going for, so they're kind of not stepping on each other's toes. So there's a contemporary one, or one that has very new releases. As an example, I saw Chain Gang All-Stars there when I was there recently. When I was just there, I picked up The Adventures of Amina al-Sirafi, which is a recent release. So that one does have more recent releases in it. There is one that is dedicated to mystery and fantasy, where it's actually no one is on staff. You just go and you put your money in the box, and the door is open and it's kind of tucked away, which is one of those things that I just savor the idea of. You find a lot of that type of stuff upstate New York, where it's kind of just you can go buy eggs and you just drop off your money and you're not buying it from a stand where you interact with a human, or you could buy maple syrup like that. I just, having grown up in not middle of nowhere California, that is not something that I am used to, and so it's just kind of a wonderful thing that I've never lost my appreciation for as I've lived here. But then there's a cookbook store and one with local history, and then there's one that's a lot older and maybe has more antique books. So it's really a place that has a bookstore for everyone, and you can spend an entire afternoon walking around there. I've only been there once because it's a bit farther for me, but it is nestled in very close to Hunter Mountain in the Catskills. So that's a very popular winter destination for skiing and snowboarding in the area. But it also has a lot of beautiful hiking for the summer. So I guess I'm just kind of reviewing the areas as I go as well. So yeah, I think that that's kind of more of an honorary mention. The next one is Braveheart Books and Bazaar. This is in Stephentown, New York, which is very close to the Massachusetts border. It's again in the middle of nowhere. It's kind of residential rural, and there's a bookstore in the middle of it. And one entrance brings you into the bazaar that is a conglomeration of a bunch of different people's stuff being sold there. Some of it is vintage, some of it is actually things people have created, and that's its own section. And then you have the bookstore, and the bookstore has a lot of nonfiction downstairs, and then upstairs it has children's, fantasy, sci-fi, and like nonfiction or contemporary stuff like that. I think I took a picture, so I'll put it in here. Overall, it's just like it's like a very lovely place in the middle of nowhere. I pass through Stephentown when I'm heading out to Massachusetts sometimes if we go the back roads. Like I said, Stephentown is very rural. Rural, generally, where I live, means it gets a lot more conservative. You're definitely passing a lot of Trump flags when you're in this part of the area. And then you get to Braveheart books and Bazaar, and I happened to be there in June, and there happened to be a pride event happening in like the field-ish area when I was there, and they were doing like a gender inclusive clothing swap in the back during this, and it was just such a lovely thing to see happening in a place like that. And then it had a lot of like more classic type fantasy, a mix of older books and newer books. There is like a Mexican place in town that was fairly good when I have been through there. And yeah, I quite enjoy that. I love a bookstore in the middle of nowhere. So the next one I want to talk about is Half Moon Books. That is in Kingston, New York, which is not in the middle of nowhere. It is much more of an established city. It has like a pretty great downtown, or at least I like the downtown. There's not a super huge amount of things to do, but there are different types of shops. There's different food places, so like you can kind of make a day of it, which is what I used to do. They also buy back books. Use the money you have as like a credit system, so like it can pay for up to half of the books that you buy. In this one, just generally speaking, it has like a front area that has a lot of nonfiction for like people who like nonfiction. And then it has like the back area that it's broken up into like a sci-fi fantasy section, a literary section, poetry, classics. It has like a pretty nice variety of books, and it's pretty frequented, so it rotates books through rather with quite a bit of consistency. I will say that here I find that they don't really differentiate like pricing. Like there are books that you could absolutely get at a thrift store for $2 that you're going to pay half price for there. So it's more for books that like I know are kind of more niche, that I'm less likely to find out and about. Like if you got, like I guess as an example, if you got Twilight from there, like you're paying half price, but like you could walk into any thrift store that sells books and find one book from the Twilight series. So I do really like that one though. Okay, now we're gonna move back to the middle of nowhere because I don't know what it is, but there's just like, I'm only making this list specifically, but I've been to a lot of used bookstores in upstate New York, or I live very close to like Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire, and I do a lot of, I guess, traveling around the area. And I have happened across so many like book barns. Like you're not in a suburban area. You're not in a place that seems like it's going to have any sort of retail, but it is a house that has been converted in such a way that they sell books out of it. Or it's someone's actual house and there's a barn next to it and the barn has books in it. And so that's the next one. It is called Rogers Book Barn. It is in Hillsdale, New York, which is kind of close to Hudson, New York, which is a place like a lot of people in the city probably know, because it's like kind of like it's like a halfway between the capital region and the or like Albany and the city, and is kind of like a getaway area. But this is not actually in the heart of Hudson, which does have things to do. And actually there are a few thrift stores there that I quite like. I think their Salvation Army is really good, or can be really good. And then there's like a Goodwill pretty close by, and they're both very large, in case you're ever there. And I actually usually go to those first to check the books, and then I'll head over to the Book Barn. But the Book Barn, I don't know, sometimes like I have this idea, it's in the middle of nowhere, so like literally, again, you're driving on paved roads, dirt roads, and you're in residential, rural, and then you just get to a place and it's a business. This one, I find things on like the cheaper side of stuff, and they have like a really good selection. So it changes rather frequently. So I guess a lot of the book barns that I go to, you find old stuff in them, like the material that they have in store is not like changing, like turning over with a high frequency, and you find kind of like those older books, which some people really enjoy, but I tend to read more modern, and I tend to have my bookshelves like filled with more modern looking books. So I prefer to go to places that have like more modern text. I found like a lot of NYRBs there. I have some deep vellum ones, like which is a small print. I found a decent amount of translated literature there. This one is 2 stories, like the other one in the middle of nowhere, and it has like a really cute upstairs area that has like a children's section. If I'm remembering correctly, this one has an area of like graphic novels and stuff, and the last time I was there, like they were less than half price of the book, so they were like a fairly good bargain. Yeah, overall I really like that one as well. There's just something about going into the middle of nowhere and like doing a hunt for books that I just really appreciate. And then the number one, and this is like a definitive number one for me, this is like my bread and butter used bookstore, is Devin Hudson. This is in Albany, so it's in the capital. So this one, it's on the corner of Dove and Hudson, and that's where it gets its name from. It's in a part of Albany that I really like. It has a lot of really like old architecture. It's in more of a residential area, and it's very close to Lark Street. That is one of like the main roads that has things going on, places to eat, places to get drinks. And then that's close to Washington Park, which is like a pretty large park that goes through part of Albany. This bookstore I go to absolutely all the time. The owner knows me. I buy my books from there. I return them to him once I'm done with them. He gives me money back. Like it's kind of, I cycle books back to him when I'm done with them and I have no further need. I would say that at least half of my shelves are filled with books from this store. They have a huge nonfiction section, which I can't really speak to as much because I don't purchase nonfiction in physical format very often. I prefer to listen to nonfiction on audiobooks, so for me there's no point in owning the physical copy. But their fiction section is great. They have some broken out by fantasy. That section's rather small. There's a mystery section. And then he really focuses in having literary fiction. Specifically, there's just, he doesn't really do, if something's a New York Times bestseller, you're probably not going to find it there. He's very specific about the stock that he takes in. Like, I kind of know some of my books he would not take, because that's not the vibe of the store. But yeah, basically, like, you could look behind me on the shelves and most of the books I probably purchased there. They're about half price now, maybe like each of them are like anywhere from $6 to $10, but he does like price them by like age, so things that are like newer and harder to get he's going to price a little bit higher as opposed to things that are like a bit older. But even some things that are older and harder to get, he will price a little bit higher as well. So it's kind of a mixed bag. Yeah, he has tons of translated fiction there. There's a lot of small presses. So a lot of the time I'll go there and I'll just like look through smaller presses, or press like, I guess if you look at, I actually bought this there very recently. If you look at the bottom of a book, you can see the press. If it's not something that I recognize, I pick it up, I look through it, I see if it's interesting. That's usually how I shop when I'm there. And I just don't have enough good things to say about that place. I don't ever go in without purchasing a book, and then we always have a conversation about what I purchased and like why I was drawn to them. And then he'll ask me everything that I've read recently, and like the only person that knows me around here, because I frequent it so often, is the bookstore. And there have been times like in 2022 when I was trying to reduce the amount of books I was purchasing, and I came in finally for the first time in months, and he's like, I haven't seen you in so long. And I'm like, I know, I miss coming here, and so I haven't been doing that anymore. But anyway, yeah, those are some bookstores I recommend going to when you're in upstate New York, if you're ever here. When I travel, I kind of go to, I love going to used bookstores. I love seeing how things differ in different parts of the country. So when I travel, I go to used bookstores. I'll test all of them out in an area. So if that sounds interesting, I can start reviewing them as I do it. I like being able to do it for the ones that I go to and frequent, because I can kind of say if like the stock changes with frequency, which makes a bookstore have more longevity in the long term. You don't want to keep going to a bookstore and just seeing the same books over and over again. So yeah, anyway, that's all I have for this video. So until next time, happy reading. Oh, actually, tell me what your favorite used bookstore is. Yeah, tell me what your favorite used bookstore is, because I love hearing about new places to go to. And yes, I have been to Powell's. Okay, that's all.